Welcome to The Trauma Teacher, the podcast dedicated to transforming therapists into masterful healers with confidence, creativity, and clarity. I'm Janice Holland, and I'm here to guide you through the journey of becoming the therapist you've always envisioned, helping you step into your full potential and make a profound impact on your clients' lives. Each week, we'll explore powerful strategies, share inspiring stories, and dive deep into the tools and mindsets you need to elevate your practice and create lasting change for both you and your clients. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, the Trauma Teacher is your go-to resource for overcoming challenges, embracing your unique healing artistry, and thriving in your career without sacrificing your well-being. So if you're ready to become the confident, creative healer you were meant to be, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hey, this is Janice. I'm so excited that you are back for another episode. Before we get started on this episode, I just wanted to jump in and say, I did not have my microphone for this episode. I recorded it on my phone because it's something that was on my heart and just ready to come out and come spilling out of me. So if the sound quality is not the best, it's okay. The message is there, and I just want you, my heart is for you to lean into this conversation with me, to check in with yourself and see how it resonates with you. And then I have an incredible invitation at the end of this episode to come join me in the Art of Healing Trauma. And I'm excited because right now the certification journey of the Art of Healing Trauma is 50% off for the last 90 days of 2024. I just want this information to be in the hands of healers, and I am just so excited to offer it at this rate. It's lower than it's ever been, and it probably will ever be in the future, but I just want this healers to have the tools and the information and the healing that they need to be able to be as present as possible for the people that they serve. So I hope this episode resonates with you. I would love to hear any feedback from you on any of the social platforms. I'm on Instagram the most, but please connect with me if this resonates with you. Let's have a conversation, and I will chat with you next week. Enjoy the episode. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of The Trauma Teacher. This is a subject that has been heavy on my heart for the last few weeks, and I've spent so much time this week trying to gather my thoughts, culminate this in a detailed way, but a clear and concise way, because I just feel that it's so important and so valuable for the work that we do as healers. It's valuable for you and the life that you are creating and the sense of purpose that you are moving forward and unleashing on this earth, and also for the people that you're serving. You know, there's just so much pain and suffering in the world, and there's so many people who have been through so much trauma, and they're trying to seek help and support, and then to seek help and support and be further harmed or be let down or disappointed. It can just be absolutely devastating, and it usually happens from a very unintentional place. I truly believe that most healers' heart is to be in service and in love and connection with the people that they're wanting to serve, and they want to do the most good. They want to be the highest service. But when we are unaware of some of our behaviors and actions, and when we're unaware of how trauma interrupts people's ability to connect and interrupts their nervous system functionings, then we do and we can unintentionally cause more pain, and it's just heartbreaking to watch. And I see it happen over and over from healers with very good intentions, healers who really want to serve and connect and at the highest level, but because of their own blind spots in places where they are still operating in self-protection or operating from a trauma response, then often it can really disrupt the service that they provide. So anyway, with that being said, I'm ready to move into our topic today, which is understanding the difference between what is familiar and what is safe for complex trauma survivors. And in that, being a really safe provider for your people, and not getting into the zone of familiarity, but staying in the zone of safety. So we're going to sift that out, what the difference is, and then how give you some tools maybe on how to do that. So one of the most challenging dynamics in trauma recovery is the stark difference between what feels familiar and what is actually safe. So for trauma survivors, this distinction isn't just blurred, it's often completely inverted. When working with clients who've experienced complex trauma, we need to recognize that their nervous systems have been wired to find safety and familiarity, even if that familiarity involves pain, chaos, or instability, or, just frustration. It is a survival strategy. The brain and body are accustomed to danger. So they start to associate the predictable patterns of trauma with a sense of normalcy. And as a result, the experiences that are objectively unsafe can feel comfortable and expected, while experiences that are genuinely safe can feel foreign, uncomfortable, or even threatening. So this is why when they come to session, if we're not really acutely aware of this truth, then we can unintentionally trip up our clients. And especially if you're not aware of this truth within you. Like I said, most healing professionals are trauma survivors, like complex trauma survivors. Many of us have been through so much, and that's why we're able to be so present and hold so much space and be very good and connected with what we do. But if we're not really clear on this familiar versus safe dynamic, if we're not really clear on how our own nervous systems are still wired to orient to unhealthy relational dynamics, then we can really get ourselves in sticky situations when it comes to working with other people, especially other complex trauma survivors. So imagine a child growing up in an environment where love is conditional and support is intermittent. Maybe they experienced a parent whose affection was tied to their performance, or who was unpredictably kind one day and emotionally distant the next. This child learns that connection comes with strings attached, and unpredictability becomes their norm. So over time, the brain associates this inconsistency with love and closeness. When the child then becomes an adult, the same chaotic dynamics are what they unconsciously seek out in relationships. So they might feel drawn to partners or friends who are unreliable or withholding because that's what love feels like to them. So this concept isn't so unfamiliar to many of us, right? Even though the pattern causes pain and confusion, it's familiar and it's what the nervous system knows. So when a new relationship or interaction presents as genuinely kind, stable, and without strings attached, the brain might register it as unfamiliar and therefore unsafe. So when they come into a session and you're holding this unconditional positive regard, you have created an environment that's calming and soothing, not just physically comfortable and safe, but you're emotionally present, making eye contact, grounded and calm nervous system yourself, ready to be present for them. For somebody who is a complex trauma survivor, who's used to chaos, who's used to pain, who's oriented to self-protection as a necessity for survival, then when they come into that environment, it's like it's a little bit jarring for them, or it's a little confusing for them. Their body will react in a way that somebody who's not experienced complex trauma. So for somebody who's not experienced complex trauma, they may come into an environment like that and go, "Oh, this is amazing. This is like a spa. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to connect with you," right? Like they will relax into it and feel really comfortable. Whereas somebody who's a complex trauma survivor isn't immediately going to get a little bit suspicious of, okay, what is this about? Is this person really safe? What are they trying to do? And this is all completely unconscious, right? They're completely just kind of on this guard, and our guards show up in different ways. So some people guard with fawning, some people guard with like immediately melting into people pleasing and trying to make you happy, where others might get defensive in ways that are more self-protective, or more combative, or more like what's the word I'm thinking of? Like guarded, no, there's a word I can't think of. So they might, be a little more rigid and stiff in their body and ask questions and kind of want to analyze you a little bit to see if you really know what you're talking about. These are all just defense mechanisms that are coming up. Very, very understandable for somebody who's been through a lot. right? So this trap that the complex trauma survivor often finds themselves in, gravitating towards situations or relationships or even therapeutic dynamics that mimic the trauma history because it feels normal. When a therapist tries to introduce true safety through consistency, presence, and boundaries, the trauma survivor's system may respond with resistance, suspicion, or discomfort. The client may unconsciously push against the safety being offered, misinterpreting it as something threatening because it challenges their deeply ingrained sense of what relationships are supposed to feel like. This is why trauma survivors might repeatedly find themselves in relationships with people who are emotionally unavailable, in work environments that are chaotic and demanding, or even in friendships where they're giving more than they're receiving. It's why they might stay in therapy dynamics that feel punitive or shame-based, not because they want to be mistreated, but because the familiar discomfort feels more tolerable than the unknown of true safety and connection. The unknown is the key word there, like anything unknown, even if they logically know it's supposed to be safe or right. If they don't know it, it feels way too threatening for their nervous system because their nervous system has been so challenged and so taxed and so overwhelmed and threatened, and their life has been threatened because, trauma threatens our feeling of it really is that serious, where you feel like you're going to die, or maybe some people have been in situations where they really would have. Then an unknown is just too risky. So if it's unsafe, there's pain, discomfort, but I know it, I know how to navigate it, then I will stay there instead of going into something that's unknown, even though logically I know it should be better or feel better. So what happens when a trauma survivor encounters true safety for the first time? Often they'll have a visceral reaction to what that can look like I was talking about earlier. So one would be dissociation or emotional numbing. Because safety feels so unfamiliar, the nervous system might shut down in response, making a client feel numb or disconnected. So they're not going to really connect with the session. They're not going to connect with the questions you're asking, or they'll answer the questions, but they're disconnected from them. You can tell they're not emotionally engaged in the conversation or in the work that you're doing in the session. Maybe some will come in with heightened anxiety, like the client feels on edge or too exposed in the presence of genuine care or kindness, causing them to withdraw or become hypervigilant. Like I was saying earlier, like they are the ones who are going to ask you lots of questions, like, what is your training? Who are you? What are you about? Like, why should they're just going to wonder who are you? What's going on? Which also leads into the skepticism and suspicion. They might question the motives behind your kindness, wondering what you're getting out of this or when the other shoe will drop. So they'll ask you even stuff about your personal life or about your schedule, or and they may test those boundaries a little bit, but it's all about trying to discover, am I safe here? Right? Or they'll go, true safety requires vulnerability and trust, which can feel overwhelming or risky. So some clients might avoid sessions or retreat into familiar patterns of overwhelm or withdraw. So, and the last one is the fawn response. Well, they'll go into an overly pleasing response for you, and they're just so good at reading people that they will know what answers you're looking for. They will know what, and if you have any kind of nervousness in you, because we're empaths, right? So we're feeling their unease when they're in the room. And if you're reacting at all to that unease with your own unease, then they will sense that, and it will cause them to go even bigger into one of these. And one of them would be the fawn, where they know how to then begin answering the questions in a way that puts you at ease, that helps you feel like settle in and more comfortable. They're not actually engaging in the session from a true, authentic, vulnerable place. They're kind of playing a game. And they don't realize they're doing that. A fawn doesn't really realize that's what they're doing. In fact, they think they're doing the highest good and doing something very good, but it ultimately keeps them stuck in a pattern. So the reaction isn't a sign that the therapist or coach is doing something wrong. It's an indication that the client's nervous system is encountering something new and doesn't yet know how to process it. All right, so how can our own insecurities derail and create this dance. I call it a dance with our clients. As therapists, it's not enough to simply create a safe space. I think that's common sense. Like creating a safe space is common sense. But it's not enough, especially for our complex trauma survivors. We have to have a solid and grounded sense of self and a solid, grounded knowledge and understanding of our role. And if we enter a session feeling insecure or feeling anxious about our performance or about how the session's going, then it can disrupt the therapeutic dynamic. Like I was saying earlier, like when our energy is split between being present for the client and protecting ourselves from perceived failure, the client feels this. They feel the internal conflict because they, especially a complex trauma survivor, they have to be highly attuned to what's happening in the people around them. They develop that sixth sense. It's a hyper-developed skill set that they have because it was necessary for survival. And many of us have that. Like that's why we're so good at what we're doing, because we are the ones also who have developed this hypersensitive ability to understand and read other people. So obviously this is none of it's verbal, it's all energetic exchanges. So if you are there and in a session and you're feeling their anxiety, you're feeling their unease, it can trigger your anxiety and trigger your unease. And our need typically, because of the role that we've typically played, is to lean forward, is to then fawn ourselves to go into a pleasing role, and then they will go into the role that they typically play. So it could be a fawn or it could be one of the others that I described, right? So now we're in this dance. This conflict can trigger the client's own survival mechanisms, leading to an unconscious dance that isn't conducive to healing. Now we're just dancing in the room together around these unconscious soothing strategies that we've developed over time. And it's often hard to identify because it's soothing, right? Like what I know how to do to soothe somebody else. So they may end the session going, oh, that was amazing. Wow. But it's because I unconsciously soothed their anxiety and they can leave the room not anxious, or they have fawned and made me feel like I did a really good job in session. So it can be like this kind of unconscious dance that's happening where so you can't necessarily base it on how you feel, because we can trick ourselves and them into believing it feels good, but really we've just soothed anxieties through a dance. All right, so let me give an example of how this plays out. If we're insecure about our ability to help or worried about getting something wrong, a part of us might unconsciously need the client to validate our role. This subtle need for validation creates an energetic barrier that the client picks up on. For a trauma survivor, this can activate the fawn response, a learned behavior of people-pleasing, compliance, or taking care of needs of others to avoid conflict or gain approval. Instead of focusing on their own healing, the client unconsciously shifts their attention to managing a therapist's unspoken needs. They might try to say the right things or appear to be progressing just to soothe what they perceive as the therapist's anxiety or self-doubt. This pattern derails the session and prevents true, authentic healing from taking place. All right, so many trauma survivors only know how to relate to people through the lens of a victim, rescuer, or persecutor role. This is called Cartman's drama triangle. There's lots of information online about it. It's been around for forever, but many people only know how to relate to people through this lens of playing a role versus being your authentic self. So if you have any self-doubt, if you're unsure that you're worthy, if you're enough, you operate in a lot of shame, however strong that sense of self is, that insecure sense of self is how strong you are at playing a role in life versus being your authentic self. So some people, it's a spectrum. Some people have a very well-defined sense of self. They're confident in who they are secure in what they can provide to the world. And so they don't really ever need to play a role with others, where some people are on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, where they have absolutely no sense of self. They have no self-confidence or sense of self-worth. then they are going to play a role 100% of the time. And then there's, most people fall somewhere in the middle where I have a general sense of who I am. I do like some things about myself. There are some areas of life where I can operate quite strongly. I can perform quite well. Many people are able to develop that in their career, so they can go to work and be very confident in who they are and make quick decisions and confident decisions and relate to others well. Whereas maybe in their romantic life or with a friend or whatever, they're not able to do that, and so they play one of these roles. So it just, you being aware, first of all, of when, it's not if, it's what areas of your life and when do you play one of these roles. All of us in the healing professions tend to be a rescuer by nature. We're very naturally good at rescuing others. And your clients, I don't know, you'll just have to identify how much they play these roles and with whom. But many trauma survivors only know how to relate to people through one of these roles, and they don't know or understand healthy relational dynamics. Their nervous system is constantly trying to sort out the environment it's experiencing, and the familiarity of the drama triangle dynamics feels like home to them. It's comfortable because it's a role that's predictable. Even though there's some chaos in it, even though there's some pain and discomfort in it, it's predictable and comfortable, so it feels like home. So this means that unconsciously the client will want the therapist to slip into the dance with them because it feels safer than exploring the unknown territory of healthier relational patterns. So if the therapist isn't rock solid in their awareness of their own tendencies to please and to take care of others, then they will unconsciously give the client what they want, a return to the victim, rescuer, or persecutor dynamic, rather than an opportunity to grow into true healing. This is like my bread and butter. This is my platform. This is why this conversation and this training is so important, because when this happens, instead of holding space for clients' nervous systems to explore the new, safer environment and calibrate to it, the therapist ends up validating the client's expectation that all relationships will eventually devolve into some painful pattern. I've seen it over and over and over again with coaches, with therapists, with psychologists, with very seasoned, well-trained people, with people just starting out. We unconsciously move back to the dance because it's familiar to us, because we know this dance so well, and our clients are desperately unconsciously wanting us to play this role that's familiar to them, because they're so uncomfortable outside of it. They're so uncomfortable exploring the new, safer environment and calibrating to it. So they will pull out all the stops. This is all unconscious, to get the therapist to revert back to rescuing them, to saving them, to taking care of things for them. So if the therapist's own insecurity, like if our insecurities are present, if we want to do it right or need validation in any way that we are good at what we do, or that we are doing a good job, then we can feed right into this dynamic. And the client can sense our unease, and they will automatically engage their fawn response, attempting to soothe and please the therapist. That is going into rescuer role for the therapist. They're viewing us as the victim at that point, and they want to please the therapist to maintain a sense of safety, to maintain that connection. It's just, we fall into this dance, and the therapist, feeling the validation and appreciation, will inadvertently reinforce that behavior, falling back into us rescuing them and then us seeing them as a victim. So it's like this rescuer victim dance happening over and over again in session. And once this happens, then the persecutor role is not far behind. So one of us eventually, so the client might start relying more heavily on the therapist, becoming dependent. And when the therapist feels overwhelmed or drained, they will shift into the persecutor role, like by either setting really firm boundaries all of a sudden and like starting to be really clear and stepping into the role you should have been in all along. Or you'll withdraw from the client emotionally and not be as present, both of which are devastating to the client and reinforcing some old belief systems, reinforcing old patterns for them, or it leads of them feeling abandoned or betrayed, Either that will happen or the client will act out against the therapist in some way. They'll report them to the board or start, talking about them. And a lot of times the therapist, it's valid. The therapist has compromised the integrity of the relationship because they've gotten too far down the line into this dance. And again, this is not just happening with new therapists. This is happening with very seasoned therapists. And it just happens slowly over time, one small compromise at a time. And before you know it, you're stuck in this really sticky situation with somebody that you don't know how to get out of. And one of you is going to act out, and it repeats patterns for both you, the therapist. Like if you look at your relational patterns, you could see this, and then it's reinforcing pain for the client as well. So no real healing. While there are some growth maybe that's happening, I'm not saying nothing good is happening out of those sessions, but ultimately no real transformational healing is happening because you've just been in this dance for who knows how long. A lot of times this is going on for a year or 2 years before it finally breaks down, sometimes longer. So it's common for trauma survivors to unconsciously test the boundaries of safe dynamics. So let's say you are clear on the role you need to be in and what you provide. You're leaving your insecurities outside and you're holding this safe space and continuing to invite the client into healthy dynamics. They're fighting it unconsciously. They are testing all the boundaries of it unconsciously. They aren't doing this to be difficult or defiant. This is their nervous system's way of assessing the integrity and consistency of the relationship. It's an automatic and deeply ingrained pattern that allows them to determine if they're truly safe or if they should keep their guard up. Guys, this is so important. It is so important. So there's two main reasons that this testing is happening. One is to see if they can get the therapist to lower their boundaries, because if they can get you to lower their boundaries, then they know that they're not really safe. If they can, they want to know that you're reliable and solid, and they will. They're not going to waste time. They're not going to get way down the road of trusting you and then find out actually they can't. So they're going to test them from the get-go. This actually feels safer to them because it reinforces. And if you do disappoint them in some way right away, that is safer to them because it reinforces the worldview that people are unpredictable and safety is an illusion. So if the therapist slips, it's almost a relief because now they know not to fully trust and they can continue to self-protect. But they might even continue coming to therapy. They're just going to get you to dance with them in the rescuer victim role. And everyone thinks that progress is happening. And like I said, there probably are little moments of healing and growth. I'm not saying nothing is black and white. So there's probably some good things happening, but ultimately not the real transformational work is not happening so that they can really fully transform into being a full creator of their life, right? So the other reason this testing happens is to fully understand what healthy dynamics look like. So since the client is familiar with the drama triangle dynamic, even though it's unconscious, they're probably not aware of it, their unconscious mind and nervous system will do all they can to get the relationship back to a dynamic that feels comfortable to them. There's often a period of time where the client will try to fawn, will try to victim, will try to challenge, and try to trip you up. And this is all an attempt to clearly see where the boundaries are and to test if your words and actions line up. Because they've experienced relationships where words and actions don't match so often, and it's so painful that it's crucial for them to test and see if you're consistent and reliable. All right. Again, critical, and so important. So for trauma survivors, this period of testing is a way to assess if the therapist can be trusted to stay consistent no matter what's thrown at them. And it takes a very aware, conscious, and secure therapist to manage all of these energetics at play and stay in the zone of safety and regulation, continuing to energetically invite the client into this new space. This is why I go into so much about why self-care is so important, why being in your own therapy is so important, why continually educating yourself by engaging in a community of other healers so that you can stay immersed in this process. Because if you are overwhelmed, if your personal life sucks, if you are drained and burnt out, then there's no way you can stay in this energetically safe space for a client to learn how to grow into being a creator of their life, getting out of survival and into creator. And so many therapists honestly haven't even made that transition fully themselves, because if you are living this overwhelmed, burnt out life in scarcity and think that your life is just meant to be in service to other people, then you're going to do this dance. You just are. Like, there's no way you're not. All right. So, okay, I'm going to back off a little bit. This is what I don't want to get into, because I've done this. I'm speaking from experience, and I just want so badly for us to be in healing, true restoration and healing, right? So as therapists, it's crucial to be aware of these dynamics in our own internal state. True safety isn't just about what we do in session. It's about the energy we're bringing. When we are solid, grounded, and secure, clients can experience safety without feeling pressure, expectation, or the need to please. It's an invitation to step out of that drama triangle and into authentic healing. And they will resist it at first because it's unfamiliar. It's scary because it's unfamiliar. In this space, the client's nervous system can start to explore what it's like to be in a genuinely safe relationship. They can begin to trust that their therapist's presence isn't conditional or based on any need for them to perform, to soothe, or reciprocate. This is where true healing begins, by staying rooted in our own security and holding that space without slipping into the old patterns. We allow our clients to calibrate their nervous systems to this new reality, one that feels strange and uncomfortable at first, but eventually becomes the foundation for a healthier way of relating to themselves and others. All right, so navigating these complex dynamics and energetics with trauma survivors requires more than intuition and well-meaning support. It demands a deep understanding of trauma's impact on the brain and body, and the skill to remain grounded and present through the most challenging relational patterns. This is where true safety is co-created and where real transformation begins. If you are ready to go beyond surface level strategies and truly master the art of trauma recovery, then I want to invite you to join me in the art of healing trauma. This is what I mean by saying it is an artistry. It is dynamic. It is fluid and alive. And this certification program will give you the tools and insights and support to help you become the grounded, confident, and deeply effective healer your clients need. Don't just offer safety, become a living embodiment of it. Become somebody who's fully operating on the creative plane and not the survivor plane. That's what the art of healing trauma is all about. It is experiential in nature, meaning you will put yourself through the process, through the healing process. When you are in this container with me, you will grow and heal any part of you that's still operating in survivor, or that's still needing or still feeling, maybe having some imposter syndrome or feeling insecure or unsure. And you will grow through that so that you can fully come alive and really know how to hold space for your clients so that they can truly transform into creators and not be in survivor mode. No dancing with them, right? So if you're ready to take your practice to the next level, I would love to invite you to enroll in the Art of Healing Trauma. Become part of this community of therapists, coaches, healers who are redefining what it means to create real healing and transformation for trauma survivors. So when you understand trauma fully, you stop guessing at what might work and start knowing. And that is where true safety and healing begins. I hope that this chat has been inspirational to you, that has made some light bulbs come on for you, helped you ground into some more information, knowledge, again, and inspire. More than anything, I just hope that it has sparked something within you to come forward and come alive and transform into the next iteration of you. And I would love nothing more than to support you inside the Art of Healing Trauma, help you become the artist that you are, that may still be hidden under some self-protective dynamic patterns. I'm going to help you identify those, release those, gain the tools and how to help do the same with your clients, and get certified in the trauma model all at the same time. This program is like nothing else out there. I'm so proud of it, and I would love nothing more than to have you in it. The link is in the show notes, and I will chat with you next week. Have a good one.